The last time we set out to find out which is the best 250cc motorcycle that offers a good blend of performance and practicality, the Gixxer 250 was the one that stood out. But today we've got the Yamaha FZS 25. Yes, we know Yamaha has taken a long time to get us a test bike, but it's finally here. So let's pit this motorcycle against the champion. One of the most interesting aspects of a street naked motorcycle is its design. And the FZ25 has received quite a unique looking face in its latest makeover.
I feel the new headlight has made a big difference to the overall styling of the bike. It looks a lot more contemporary.
It reminds you of Robocop or something.
Yeah. And similar to the MT15 as well.
Yeah.
The front end. And I feel the FZS, which gets this two-tone color scheme, looks quite neat, and the handguards are a nice addition as well.
And speaking of color, I don't think I've ever seen a motorcycle in India where this British green color, at least not from the factory. So very attractive, isn't it?
Attractive and classy, but I can't say the same thing about these golden sticker highlights.
You find them too loud?
Too loud.
Well, I know it's a dull gold. Maybe you could get used to it. But it's not for everyone.
Speaking of designs, I feel Suzuki has got it right with the MotoGP color schemes on the Gixxer.
I can understand why. I remember the number of times you were checking out this motorcycle even when you were riding that.
Yeah.
And yes, while the Gixxer 250 looks a lot like the smaller Gixxer 150, it differentiates itself well with this optional MotoGP color scheme. The bright blue contrasts well against the fluorescent yellow detailing, and the diamond cut alloy wheels add to the premium feeling. I think on the whole, both motorcycles look very attractive in their own right. The FZ again, with that smashing green color, is something that really holds a lot of attention.
So, it's certain that both these Japanese bikes will catch attention, especially in these paint schemes. But what about features? The FZS25 gets real-time fuel consumption data along with other basic information on its tiny reverse LCD display. However, the unit looks pretty dated, and it's about time Yamaha replaced it with something bigger and more modern. The Suzuki's LCD display looks nicer and benefits from a gear position indicator and a shift light. The latest update has also resulted in the FZ getting a more powerful headlight and LED turn indicators. But the Gixxer's headlight still does a better job.
As it stands then, the Gixxer is better equipped than the FZ. But now let's talk about these 250cc engines.
Even though it's the same size as the Suzuki's at 249cc, it puts out a little less power and torque. And it has a 5-speed gearbox instead of the 6-speed unit on the Gixxer.
And you can make out the difference in performance, right?
For sure.
Especially when you're accelerating or when you're out on the highway, this engine feels quite refined and relaxed compared to that engine over there.
More power and a 6th gear for the FZ would have certainly been nice, but the Yamaha has well spread out gear ratios and it packs strong mid-range performance. In fact, it actually set surprisingly close performance numbers to the Suzuki in our tests. The 0 to 60 kph time was almost the same, and it was a little about 1 second slower to 100 kph.
I was surprised by that, considering that the FZ weighs about 2 kilos less than the Suzuki. But again, the Suzuki has the performance advantage, making more power. It also revs high. The peak power is at a higher RPM compared to this FZ. So you kind of have a feeling that you expect rather that this motorcycle will outperform the FZ by a significant margin, but that's really not the case, and I was a little surprised. But at the same time, I have to say that this engine is a gem in itself because it loves to rev. It has that solid punch. And it just puts you in this mood to really ride fast. You really want to rev out this engine. It puts a bigger smile on your face, don't you think?
For sure. And you can see the same thing about its handling as well.
So again, the Gixxer got a very communicative front end, and I think in the corners, it is a lot of fun.
Yes, Rishabh, the Gixxer was way more fun, and I felt a lot more confident on it. But the FZ isn't too far behind. And you have to give it credit, even though it has a longer wheelbase and it doesn't have as sporty tires as the Gixxer, it still gets around the
Yeah,
corners
but this is
quite
running
well.
radials and that's running a normal nylon grip.
True.
Yeah, I think given that, it's still, I could see that you were at least keeping up with the Gixxer when I started to push hard.
The Gixxer is certainly the more entertaining handler, but the FZ is a more comfortable bike. It has a slightly softer and more absorptive ride quality than the Gixxer. Factor in the strong mid-range performance, and the FZ is definitely the nicer city bike, but it also has the capability to be fun when you take it out on a longer ride after a week of commuting. Overall, when it comes to comfort and practicality, the Yamaha is a step ahead.
True, Yamaha is gunning for practicality, and that comes through even with the ergonomics.
Right.
The handlebar is quite high set. The foot pegs are not as rear set as the Gixxers.
Exactly. I think, yeah, because that motorcycle is really designed for a long highway tour. Because I love that seat, I love the spaciousness compared to when you're sitting on the Suzuki, you're on this little slightly more canted forward position.
A little more committed.
Yeah, it's sporty, it's nice, but I guess after spending 100, 150 odd kilometers or maybe even 200 kilometers, you may want to just stretch your legs out. But that's not going to be the case with the FZ at all.
If only the FZ had an additional 6th gear and a bit more power, it would have been a great highway bike. But as things stand, the engine is a little rough and you will feel more vibrations than on the Suzuki when holding high RPMs out on the highway. The FZ also loses out slightly when it comes to fuel efficiency, and the Gixxer consumes less fuel both in the city and out on the highway. Rishabh, the FZS has a lot going for it. It looks quite nice.
It does.
It's also more city friendly and long distance friendly due to its ergonomics. It's a slightly more comfortable as well. But Rishabh, I'm going to pick the Gixxer and I'll let you tell them why.
Well, yeah, that's because the Gixxer is for the enthusiasts.
As Firoze mentioned, the FZ certainly has its appeal to those looking for a more comfort-oriented bike. But the Gixxer is easily the one enthusiasts will appreciate more. It is the better handler, it has the more involving powertrain, and it also manages to be a little more fuel efficient. Of course, the price has to be considered too, and while the FZ used to be much cheaper than the Gixxer, its latest price of Rs 1.58 lakh reduces the gap to Rs 9,000. That's still a good amount of money, and if practicality is your top priority, the FZ will definitely keep you happy. However, the Suzuki makes you feel more alive while still being reasonably practical, and that's why we think the Gixxer is worth the extra money and it remains our favorite of the budget 250s.